we're live. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us to the Home Service Summit webinar series. We are getting ready for our big event that's coming up here in November on the 6th through the 10th. And in advance of that, I thought it'd be a great idea to bring on some of our top performing franchisees from the various brands and give you all a chance to learn more about them and about how they've made their business successful. And so to that effect, we've got Cheryl here with us today from Bio1 in Denver. And we're really excited to get talking with her about her story, how she got into the business, how she makes her business work. Bio1 is a very unique brand, to say the least. It is a brand that is all about taking care of people, bringing them first before the business, but business usually follows. You take care of people, you take care of customers. So we're going to jump into that with Cheryl and really want to get into her story. Cheryl, how did you get into Bio1? How'd that happen? How did you find it?
You know, it's interesting because people ask me that all the time. How in the world did you get into that business? So my story might be a little bit different. There may or may not be any. And when I say my, I mean our.
Sure.
My husband, Greg, is involved as well. He wasn't in the beginning. But just to dial back to 2012, we lost our jobs on the same day in the same hour, unrelated. And he was a national corporate vice president for an ambulance transportation company. And yes. And we thought, what in the world are we going to do? And he's a couple years older than me. And, you know, he was not going to be able to replace his income. And we decided to look for businesses. So he did what a lot of folks do and start Googling businesses to start. So that's what he did. Long story short, we bought a printing franchise. He ran that for several years, retail, brick and mortar space. And then I became an active franchise broker. So have you ever seen realtors start to buy houses as their business longer? Well, that's dangerous for a franchise broker too. So I actually ran across Bio1. At the time, the franchisor was actually in Highlands Ranch where I am.
Yeah.
And so we connected, but the area was not available. It intrigued me. I started presenting it to clients. Yeah. And I even told them if I had the option, I would be doing this, but you need to make sure it's right for you and your community.
Yeah.
So here we are. And then we actually started another service franchise. And then a few months later, we acquired Bio1 Denver from the previous owner who had it for a couple of years. So that's how we got here.
I love, you're the kind of person I can tell that you can't help but sell something you fall in love with and believe deep down that it's a good business for people. That is who you are. Are you currently a franchise consultant that you still help people find a business?
I'm no longer active. I do not have time for it right now. I'm growing business.
You got into it, you helped others get into it, and then you got business for yourself, and now it's like that's all the time you had. Which network were you with? Which broker network
it was Franchise Brokers Association.
FBA, okay.
Based out of FBA, based out of Orlando area. And the cool thing is that I was also independent. So I wasn't married to a line of brands. I could represent any brand. And I actually showed a brand you were with at the time to clients as well, Scott.
I love that. That's right. Which brand was that? Was that 5-Star Painting?
5-Star Painting. And you came to Denver and brought brokers in, and I was one of them.
Oh, is that awesome? I love it. We've got history.
We do have history.
So I love, did you fall, just for my own benefit, did you fall in love with the idea of helping people find a business themselves as Greg got into his first business? Is that what got you into becoming a broker? Or did you help Greg as a broker?
Actually, I became a broker about the same time that he bought our other brand. So that I'd love to say that's the answer, but no, but it was fun. It was fun to explore businesses. And we decided I would go this route and he would run our printing business.
Yeah. Now, do you still have the printing business right now?
We sold it. And that's actually part of our story. He sold that and jumped on board.
Okay.
Or we sold it and he jumped on board. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So you guys work together in Bio1. So, and for those listeners who have not had the pleasure of learning about Bio1, just for everyone who's on this call that doesn't know enough about Bio1, what does Bio1 do?
Well, I answer that differently based on my audience because I actually help people craft their 30-second pitch or their commercial. In essence, we clean up messes for people on sometimes the worst day in their life. messes that they should not clean up.
Mhm.
And that ranges from, a crime scene cleanup to hoarding to now illicit drugs. Things that people shouldn't be cleaning up, we pick up where a maid leaves off
Yeah,
if you have a mess in your
exactly.
property.
Yeah. So, in order to do that kind of work, you're in, a suit many times taped
Yes,
off. It's a
yes,
biohazard suit. You're using special chemicals to make sure
yes,
that after the job is done, it's completely clean and sanitary. And as you mentioned, people are maybe as well as be worth just exploring. If something bad happens, like a loved one passes away, right? Which I think you often appreciate. I'm at the age now where I've got my parents are getting older, and
Mhm.
I have a grandma on my wife's side who's 101. She turns 102 this year.
She's a
She's a
centurion.
centenarian, yes,
But
which is
yeah,
incredible.
thank you.
Centurion, yeah, and so at some point we all know we're leaving this life. It's going to happen.
Yes,
Every single one of us. There's only one way
yes,
out. And with that, when this does occur, especially when it's someone that's very old, and if there's no one living with them, that person will often not be found for a week or 2 weeks in some cases. And when they are
absolutely.
discovered, somebody has to go in and make sure that that place isn't clean before the house can be, habitating again. So
Yes.
how do people find Bio One? Because I would not know Bio One even existed because I haven't had to deal with that yet. So
Well,
tell me that
that's the
how
thing.
what is it? Yeah, what does it look like for people? How do they
Well,
find you?
there's a number of ways. They might go on the internet and search death cleanup or undiscovered death cleanup in the case
Yeah,
like you're talking about. They may receive information, a list of companies from a police department victims advocate or from
yeah,
a coroner. So in the case of those death instances, it might be an estate planner, it might be an attorney. There's a variety of different avenues where they may receive advice and information. It's not going to be from their insurance company. That is not the
yeah,
first call they make.
yeah. See, that's what you said there. I think is so interesting because I wouldn't have thought that, right? Like for Bio One to be effective as to establish effective referral sources, it sounds like you need to know lawyers, you need to know estate planners, you need to know victim advocates, all these different groups. They need to be aware that Bio One is an option because they often don't refer one specific option, do they? They often give a couple options that exist.
Especially the government agencies. Now, your private estate attorneys and realtors and other
Okay.
trusted folks in that arena may do so, especially once they get to know you. Police
Yeah.
departments are supposed to give a list
Yeah.
and the coroners. Sometimes they'll nod or wink and say, but call this one, or here's my favorite.
Yeah, of course. So they know that they can trust that it gets the
Yes,
job done. And,
yes.
for my own benefit and for everyone else on this call, I've been learning a lot more about Bio One. It recently implemented a system called Service Minder, which we're using to keep track of the business. And so I
Mhm.
regularly ask Vanessa, how's the business doing? You know, how are our franchisees finding work? How are they growing their business? We're trying to learn from each other. And I've discovered recently that about half of the business comes from online search, roughly. People are online searching for something that can help them in this area because sometimes it's hoarding as well, or animal leave behinds have to be
Mhm.
cleaned up. That kind of thing has to happen, right? And
Yes.
so some of those cleanings are very much easily found on the internet. And then there's the ones you just mentioned. Um, for you, is that similar to what you've experienced? Is roughly half the business coming from online searching,
Now,
half from referrals?
yes, and it's because people don't even know we exist, like you alluded to earlier, Scott, and they don't know that they need to know Greg and Cheryl with Bio One who can take care of them if something happens on their property or in their property. And
Yeah,
so they don't know what they don't know about that. So it is natural that if you're, and especially with hoarding, you're not going to go ask your friends. Like if you might ask your friends, I need a plumber. Who do you know? They're not,
yeah,
the hoarders aren't going to say, or a number of other, whether it's animal hoarding, what have you, they're not going to say, hey, I got to clean my house up now. Who do you know?
uh-huh,
Because it's a very private and shameful and embarrassing scenario.
yeah, yeah,
So they typically are looking, and oftentimes they're looking late at night and we
Uh-huh.
may receive that call in the morning,
Oh, yeah.
or
Yeah.
they may send us a link from our website, and then we reach out to them.
Ah,
It's almost like they're incognito. If I can just go into a website and enter my
yeah.
info, well, I've done something, and then we call them, and that's okay too. So you're right. It's not, we don't have a big sign out there that says, bring us your message. We got you no matter what it is.
Yeah.
They don't know about us. They don't even know that they need to know.
Well, and that's, speaking to that point, Bio One, I understand, often does not even have branding on the vehicles that come out to the site to
We
do
don't.
cleanups because
We don't.
we want to be discreet about what's happening. There could have been a death in the home, or mental illness has occurred and someone's hoarding, or something like that, or there's animal issues in a house,
Right.
and so it is discreet, and so Bio One doesn't actually tell the whole world about what we're doing. It's just a white van that shows up, and
Absolutely.
you come in and you take care of the jobs. Um, if you don't mind, tell us about what is a specialty rest. I call this specialty restoration, right?
It
It's a
is. You
restoration
can
type
beat that.
business,
Yes.
but it's very
Mhm.
specialty. Uh, and often restoration, some amount of the work is done through insurance. What percentage of your work is done with insurance?
Typically, it's just the death cleanups or the crime scene cleanups. Um,
Yeah.
and we often get asked, will hoarding be covered by my insurance? So all the animal waste, all the gross filth, all of the others are not. So it's typically, and sometimes drugs. So it's typically a death cleanup or a crime scene, some kind of trauma, um, crime or trauma or death, undiscovered death or suicide, what have you. And then the occasionally the drug cleanup is covered. Although in commercial property, we're working in hotels right now, with several affected rooms with meth and fentanyl and MDMA, ecstasy, and
Hmm.
their deductible is so high that they're not even going to reach their deductible with these rooms.
Really?
So it
No.
becomes private pay in that sense.
I even heard that Buy One will go in and do like Enterprise Rental Car will have Buy One clean up their cars afterwards if there's like a drug issue that happened or related in that vehicle. So it's really interesting. The
Yes.
business really it is solving problems for people all over the place.
Yes.
And maybe if you don't mind speaking to, because I know I've heard that what we charge for this work is in some cases, quite significant per
Hmm.
hour in terms of the fees. What
Hmm.
do you charge for your services typically on the high end and the low end? Like, I'm assuming there's a variance there depending on what work you're doing and who you're doing it for. Maybe just speak
Yes.
to that a little bit.
Well, of course, anything that is dangerous in terms of the restoration term is IDLH, immediate danger to life and health.
Uh,
So bloodborne pathogens, anything that's involving bodily fluids from animal or humans, we charge more for. And then we actually have a rate for the lead technician, and then we have a little lesser rate for the additional technicians. And then there, of course, it really comes down to time and materials, as most restoration jobs.
yeah.
But certainly, and that rate is similar to the drug cleanup rate. Hoarding is a much lesser rate. And then we have a sliding scale, for example, and I say sliding not due to need, but sliding due to severity for hoarding.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's just clutter, we're maybe charging $1,900 a day with the crew for several man hours a day.
Yeah.
And then in the extreme cases, it might be 2,500 to 2,600 a day. And that's a 6-hour day, because when you're in a white suit, when you're in PPE and you're schlepping stuff and moving things around, you get overheated quickly.
Yeah.
So they're worn
Yeah.
out. And it's not just that, it's also the emotional and mental part of it. Our
Uh-huh.
crew is amazing. They work with these folks, and you're exhausted after 6.5 hours.
Yeah.
So that rate's 2,600 a day. And that's typically where we're finding critters such as, should I name them?
Yeah.
Cockroaches. I'll never forget the time back in the day when I was in the field all the time. We were working in an apartment that was hoarded. The woman had also passed in there, so it was a double cleanup. And I lifted something out of the kitchen sink, and cockroaches looked like a tapestry all of a sudden. And I didn't,
Gosh.
just imagine all of a sudden, all these little things.
Yes. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
awful. It wasn't so bad on my feet because I had a suit on and then booties over that suit.
Yeah.
But when they were right in front of me crawling like that and just seemed like a million of them, it was pretty rough. And then they were coming up out of the sink. And
Oh my gosh.
so cockroaches, bed bugs.
Yeah.
A little known fact, people are freaked out by bed bugs. They're hard to get rid of. That's the rough part. They do not carry disease, but fleas do.
Uh-huh.
Fleas are more of a threat than bed bugs. The things I've learned since I've owned Bio One.
So what I love it, you actually said something earlier. You used to work in the business. Like there was a time in which you actually would go on site, and I listed some time on this, but this is, in my view, the most important part of owning any business. At the moment when you stop working in the business and you start to elevate yourself, and so thinking strategically about the business and how to grow the business, and that's the mode everyone dreams of. We all dream of that moment in time when we can step out and start working on the business in a different way. I really have two questions for you on this. First of all, what do you love about Bio One more than anything else? And then the follow-up is, how did you transition from that, working in the business to now where you're at home today? It's 11:17. You're enjoying a nice video call with me. We're having a great conversation. The work is happening in the background, right? So
it is.
If you don't mind, tell us about what you love about it and how that moment you made that transition.
You bet. Well, first of all, what I love about it, it is beyond rewarding. And when I say rewarding, I'm speaking of the emotional reward, the satisfaction of helping people. Certainly there's a financial reward, or we wouldn't still be in business after all these years. The rewards I'm speaking of are the satisfaction of walking into this property, if you can even get in the door, for example, in hoarding, or you might start at the door and work in, declutter your way in, clean your way in. Amongst the rice and the mice, well, there's rice sometimes too on the floor, among the mice and roaches and whatever else there is. And we work with that person. You help calm their anxiety. We're not therapists, but we're pretty good at working with these people. And to me, hoarding is trauma-based. It's actually clinically recognized now. And you're able to go in and work with them for, it might be a day, Scott, it might be 7 or 8 days that you're working with this client in their property.
Wow.
Or their family member. And you get to the end and their home is now safe. I believe their mind is clear, whether they want to acknowledge that or not, because I know when my office is a little cluttery right now, I need someone to help me with that. But I know my mind is free. My mind feels good after I declutter, in addition to the physical space. So I actually find that it's not just satisfaction, it's joy. Mm-hmm. Or let's talk about a family member who calls, or a friend, and says, my husband took his life. My husband shot himself on the deck yesterday.
Yes.
And I might get a little emotional. After so many years, I have what's called vicarious trauma, and I seek help for that. And we actually pay for our employees to go to therapy as well, if they feel that need. So there's emotion in my story sometimes. Or when the 3-year-old brother is accidentally shot by the 12-year-old brother because the parents left firearms and bullets around.
But yeah.
So the satisfaction of taking that caller and working with them from day one, and actually, Scott, I say the sale, but it's really not the relationship. Mm-hmm. The relationship for that project starts on that phone call, because we listen. We're not judgmental, no matter what it is. We listen. We're not judgmental. We work compassionately with them. And there is nothing like being on the phone with someone, talking about a suicide or talking about a hoarding situation, and they can't get the words out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a natural fit for me. So while that's uncomfortable, I became comfortable with the silence. And I became comfortable with saying, I recognize that this is difficult for you. I'm here to help, and get them talking. So that's the phone call. And then there's typically not so much on the death cleanups and the suicides, but on the other types of things, there's typically an estimate, and then you establish a connection again and deepen that relationship in person. And then throughout the process, and in the beginning it was me, now it's our team. Just spending days or parts of days with those folks and helping solve their problem that has caused shame in their lives for years. So
Wow.
it's the satisfaction of those stories, and to have them sometimes write a note after a suicide cleanup and say, you and your team were so compassionate. That is what I love most about our business.
I hear that from every single Bio One owner I have met. Just what you're describing there, you can feel the emotion as you're describing it, right? In the business you're doing, you truly care about these people that you're coming in contact with that are struggling with something, and you've helped them solve a very complex problem that they didn't know how to solve. And
Right.
and at the same time, you're running your own business doing it. And I think it's a wonderful thing. We hear it over and over again. Help first, business second. It is definitely part of the Bio One way. And I love that about your culture that you've created Bio One. So I totally get what you love about it now. I can feel it. How do you take that to the point where you're not the one doing all the work? And because it's a very complex business.
Yes.
Actually, in saying that, it's complex in the fact that there's probably a lot of steps to make sure it's done right, because there's some hazards involved. But actually, it's a pretty simple business, right?
It's
If you have
simple, but it's not
3 or
easy.
4 or 5 employees, right? It's there's a couple employees, a couple of vans. It's not complex in that way. It's just that it's very specific. Mosquitoes here. I think you call it a mosquito shield.
I know a company. I'm a sister company. That's right.
I'm calling actually from my cabin up in Canada, and mosquitoes managed to get in. Look, there it is. I got them. All right.
Good. You get them.
Okay.
And if you hear little details, it's my kitty. So how do we? You were saying it is a simple process, but it's not an easy process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And not easy because of the complexities of either what we're cleaning up. It might be the biohazard, or it's the people involved, and sometimes both.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the question is, how do we go from I was the one taking the calls, working in the field, sending the invoices, billing insurance, all of collections, all the above. That didn't last long, where it was me and one part-time person. Okay. So we actually lured the part-time person away, and they became full-time with us. And so then it was the two of us. And after a period of time, it didn't take long, we needed to add more staff. So we hired a part-timer, and eventually more full-timers, some part-timers. And after a little over a year and a quarter, year and a half, I was able to remove myself. Occasionally, I maybe did some estimates, or what we call assessments.
Yes.
But my strength is getting out in the community and networking and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Or networking is part of work. Yeah. So that's really where my strength was. Greg joined the business at about that time as well, sold the printing franchise. And he thrives in the back office space. So he was doing that, and I was doing the part that that I'm best. We even tell our employees, we want to get the right people on the bus and then put them in the right seats. My right seat is not numbers. I will admit that. Scott, I think you're a numbers guy. I respect that, and I need numbers people. That's not my happy place. So we eventually obtained more staff, and we've actually built layers of leadership now within our team. And we have technicians, lead technicians, now a supervisor, and then a manager. So we have 4 layers of management within our team.
How many employees do you have now in the organization total?
Without Greg and I, with Greg and I, 6.
Okay.
And we actually need to hire another as well. So
Awesome. So what I love what you said is in this Team Up and I call, if you listen to the whole call last month with Larry instead, Larry was the person that's out there, shaking hands and kissing me. He is very much a networker. He's very good with people. He makes it right. And I can tell just you are that kind of a person. You're great with people. You're very charismatic. And I'm sure people feel very comfortable around you. And so you're able to make people feel comfortable and you get the name out there. And so you're playing to your strengths, right?
yes.
And Greg's making sure that the trains run on time. Things
And
are leading.
I'm thankful for that. And I will tell you too, again, this has been about a 7-year process, Scott. So he was doing the assessments and answering the phone. And like you said, making sure the train stayed on the track and that the wheels were greased and all that. He actually now really isn't doing assessments unless our manager is on vacation or unable to do them. So we've really built those layers so that we can focus on what we need to focus on to work on the business.
This redundancy. You can, for example, leave the business for a week, go on vacation, and it keeps going. Someone's taking care of the calls, do the appointments.
We did that.
That's the dream.
For the first time, we did that without answering the phone. Last summer, we went on a small family trip to Mexico. It was wonderful. And it was,
I love it.
It had been since 2012 since we did that. From 2012 to 2023. Since we took a vacation where we weren't answering our business phone.
That must have been a wonderful feeling.
It was.
When did you, so how long have you owned Bio1 for? You bought the business, an established business that was already there. What year was that?
January 1st of 2018.
Okay, so it's now been, you're going on your 6th year, this year of ownership. When would you say that moment occurred? How long did it take for you to get to that point where I think you said about 1.5 years is when you started stepping out.
About 1.5 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what's if you don't mind, tell our listeners I know you mentioned that you're out there meeting people, networking and marketing. What has worked the best to help you grow your business?
Outside of AdWords, if you're just going to turn on AdWords, I think that is, you're missing out on a lot because there is nothing like building relationships and getting in front of people. And when I network, I actually, even though I'm outgoing, when I network, it's not about me. If I'm in a room, I'll go introduce myself to someone and ask some questions about them.
Mm-hmm.
People, and you probably know this saying, people may not remember what you say. They remember how you made them
said
feel.
it.
Oh, okay. How you said it. Sure. Because it's how you made them feel. And even introverts, I network with plenty of introverts, but I'm quiet other than asking questions. And I've learned if they say, oh, well, this is what I've learned not to interrupt. I simply ask questions. And it might be as simple as if we're at the snack bar at the event, I say, oh, what brought you here today? So really taking interest in those people. And if it's a group where I'm very involved in our local chamber. And and what was really good for us is that I became the chair of the Women in Business Leadership team. Talk about exposure.
Indeed.
Fantastic. And now I'm no longer the chair of that after 2 years. I'm on the chamber board, which is hard to get on the board of a chamber this size. It's the third in the state. And it's not about, oh my goodness, look, I'm on a chamber board. It's about what the chamber has noticed about someone who does a messy job for a living. I'm not the banker. I'm not the insurance agent. Or the realtor. We're someone that cleans up messes. It's blue collar.
Yep.
And so it's things like that. Another thing I did, because I'm a little bit of an innovator when I can, and I am a woman in a man's world. Nothing wrong with the men. I value the men in my life, but in the restoration business, it's typically men. And I raise boys, love my boys, lots of men in my world. I said, I want to start a women's group. a women's mastermind peer group. And I did 7 years ago. And we're still around, and we have grown. We support each other. We, as you know, the whole mastermind kind of thing. We talk about problems. We go through a series of books. We learn. And then I've been invited to so many groups. I know I'm talking a lot about this piece of it, but
It's
I
super
don't know.
important.
It is super important, and it's about the people. And I'm a little less traditional than some of the folks, some of the Buy One owners, because I do some different things to get out there.
It-
And the other is I haven't been invited to so many groups, and I did find another peer group recently. I was invited to join. I thought, oh man. So I went, and I like it. And there's an estate planner in that group, and that estate planner invited me to their mastermind. You know what? I just realized I'm in 3 of them. I said, dude, I'm in 3 of them. And you get to know people, and those people know people. So
Yeah.
the theme is get out there, find the right place to be. If you just show up, and nothing against financial planners, but you know, it's going to be the realtors of there's certain people that are just going to want to fill your calendar up. So I've
Yeah.
gotten good at saying no to the people that I don't want to spend time with.
Mm-hmm.
They may not like it, but I politely say what I need to say. And so
Yeah.
I've really been working this for many years and gotten it down, not to an exact science, a little more of an art, because you have to nicely say, I have those needs taken care of. But anyway, nice ways to politely say no. So back to getting to know people. That's in addition to the other typical target markets. This is a little
Mm-hmm.
different kind of getting out there. And because of that, I've had visibility. I've had videos posted. I get up in front of 150 women, and when I'm chairing a conference, just lots of opportunity to be in front of people.
Cheryl, well, I think it's super important, and I heard them mention this earlier. For our live listeners, feel free at any point in time in the chat to ask any questions you've got for either Cheryl or I, and I'll make sure we get to those during this conversation. 2 things that came out that I think are really important. One is you've been playing to your strengths. I don't know any people that are part of 3 mastermind groups. You clearly are a people person. It is a strength of yours, and you're leveraging that. You mentioned how the one you recently joined has a financial or a estate planner. These people can refer work to. I think you actually mentioned to me backstage that you actually were referred some work off of one of your more recent
the following week
groups.
Yes.
And so I've always said your network, one of the best ways to increase your net worth is to improve your network. They're very much connected. Those 2 are absolutely connected.
Yes.
And I've been saying this for years. Myself, I belong to my own little mastermind group, which I've been doing now for 13 years. Many of them the same people I've known now, and we're going through the same journey of business ownership, raising a family, kids, and having some company in life like that are to kind of be some sanity checks is super important because we're all going to go through things that are challenging in business and in our personal lives that I think having that with us can help us navigate more effectively. But also, it should open our eyes to how we can be more effective in our businesses. So, the one reminder I'd say here is, if you're a listener right now and you're wondering how do I grow my business, what Cheryl is sharing here is one way, and I can tell you it's very, very effective. A strong network can be very, very influential in growing the business. It may not be the only way. It is one way that's very effective. And I know at Bio One, almost half of the business is coming from referrals, so it's a big investment there. But whether you're at any brand you're at, network is so critical. So, invest in it. And if you're not the person to do that, have someone on your team who loves to do that for you.
Yes.
That does this because it's super important. The next thing is the, I want to spend some time on this, if it's okay, Cheryl, is the value of a peer group. And if you wouldn't mind, let's just dig in for a second. Exactly what that looks like. How often do you meet? How long do you meet when you do meet? What do you guys talk, ladies in some cases or guys, talking about in your mastermind sessions? And if someone's not in a peer group, how could they find one? Like, what would be the first step towards being part of a peer group?
Okay, if I miss anything, that was a lot that you asked. If I miss
Okay.
something, let me know.
Okay.
So the group that I started, we meet twice a month for a meeting. We meet for an hour and a half. We have a topic that we work through. I've started something that I actually borrowed from my son Kyle, and I truly like it. And before we start our meeting with my women's mastermind, is we give a traffic light color. How are you today? Red, yellow, or green. And that
Mm.
has proven to be one of the best things we do. And I also teach, when I run a meeting, we don't need to have a meeting to have a meeting. We need to have a meeting that's productive. And when it's time to stop, it's time to stop.
Hmm.
That's how I run my meetings, of course, in a nice way. And we've learned to say, you know what? Leads have been slow for me. Business is slow. And that becomes a topic. We then talk about that. But that really gives us a check in and creates that personal level more so within a business group. So we meet twice a month for an hour and a half. We have a social in between sometime in that month. The other groups that I am part of, the other two, are also twice a month, about this in the same time frame, and very similar things. We're problem solving. If who has an issue this week that we need to work on, and even when it's not your issue, you might learn from what you're
Oh
listening to
yeah.
someone else, because we
Yeah.
business owners typically have a lot of the same issues.
Yep.
It might be hiring and firing this week, and that's a whole different piece. I know one of
Yeah.
the things we're supposed to talk about is what we don't love about our business. Hiring and firing is
Yeah.
one of them. I do it. Um,
Yeah.
and then if you're looking, and you know what, some folks just aren't a networker, and that might be an opportunity for someone to. I'm not a BNI fan myself, but I know another Bio One owner who's in BNI and loves it. And
Hmm.
and so for folks who are not comfortable like I am out there networking, you might join something structured like a BNI.
Yep.
Another thing you could consider your chamber. It depends on the community. I really think the same thing isn't the answer for, in my opinion, in every community, in every market. We need to see what works. Denver is a highly competitive market for what we do. Now,
Yep.
even the June callers are taking our bio jobs. And, another biohazard cleanup company has come to town, and they're all over the nation, and they're a big threat to Bio One.
Hmm.
Yes.
There's
So,
always
and
competition.
there is always competition. That's right. And so you've got to find a way, of course, to get in front of folks, but look on Meetup. There's something called Meetup on the internet. So search
Yeah.
Meetup. It might be a chamber. It might be a BNI. It might be a service club like Kiwanis or Rotary. It might, if you love to golf, go find someone who likes to golf and get on the golf course, and bring a team. Find ways to get involved. And the other thing I'll push here is, if you don't love to network like I do, at least get involved. Don't just show up and say, I'm not getting anything out of it. Get involved. Is there a committee or a team of something that you can join and be a solution? That is what has really served us well with me doing that.
So I want to just reiterate two things you said that are valuable. One, BNI is a great networking group. It's more about like you can only have one real estate agent, one estate planner,
Yes,
one
it's
just one for each category, and it's very much focused on how do we bring each other business, right? You come
yes,
there, you do your elevator pitch that's like
it's
30
structured.
seconds.
Yep.
It's very structured, and then you give referrals, you get referrals, and you
Mhm.
find, and in general in life, if you give and add value to others, it always comes back. It always comes
Absolutely.
back. So if you're
Absolutely.
always thinking about how do I bring value to this meeting at BNI and how do I help this person be more successful, you'll find that it comes back in spades. So that's one thing. I love you mentioned BNI. The other thing you mentioned is using a mastermind group to address issues, right? You said, and we can talk about the challenges of employment. Hiring good people, that's not easy, and then having to let people go that aren't the right fit, that's not easy. And
Right?
every business owner has to go through that. And
Yes.
for me personally, what I've found in a peer group, and I'm going to make a plug here, I've been encouraging all our brands at 5 Star, to create peer groups inside each brand so that there could be 7 or 8 people that are at Bio One that are part of a peer
Mhm.
group and talk about specific issues at Bio One that they face and they're
Right.
helping each other. And so I'm
Right.
going to plug it again. If you are a franchisee of Bio One and you want to be part of a peer group, we will make one for you at Bio One because we need it to happen at our own brands. But when you in these moments where there's a clear issue that someone brings to the meeting, you see a red light, I've got a problem, and my most important person, my manager or my supervisor, quit, and I don't have a way of solving this problem, then the other 8 people in the room will go, well, I've dealt with that at some point. Someone has, I guarantee it. And they can
Mhm.
help you walk through how to resolve that issue. And so I want to plug that. It's so valuable. I love that you're taking advantage of that, Cheryl. And I want to come now to our live audience. We've got 2 questions here, one from Monty and one from Vanessa. Good to see you both on the call. Thank you. Monty asked the question, Cheryl, what are the 1 or 2 incorrect pathways you went down in the business that you learned from? It sounds like Monty's looking for, what have you done wrong? What didn't work out that we can learn from?
Plenty. Believe me, that's an interesting question. One of them is, believe it or not, discounting too much for someone just to get the sale.
Yeah.
We deserve to charge what we charge. We're not over the top. And you know what I found? The people that you give a big discount to are the most difficult customers. That has been our experience. It might not be anybody else's, but they're the biggest pain in the tush. So that's one of them. Now, that's not to say we don't provide discounts. Certainly, if we have a property manager, police departments, that's a relationship thing. I'm talking about the one-off customer. Well, I'm not going to pay that much. I understand. Hopefully, there's someone else that can meet your needs. So that's one of them. And the other is, and I now have a saying, hire slow, fire fast. Waiting too long to let somebody go. We've been at this a while, so I have lots of different experience. So if they start to go off your path, and I will tell you, we're very picky. We're very picky. We are now at a point where we hire based on culture and the ability to act. Or you got more mosquitoes?
I'm in mosquito land, and Mosquito Shield's not here yet. I got to find a franchisee. This should be
You
a
better
signal right
find it.
now.
I think I forgot where I was. Oh, once you start seeing them make, little steps off the road, start documenting it, unless it's egregious. There's certain things, and know your state laws. I would give that piece of advice too. Know your state laws. You can find them on state websites. So biggest mistake was waiting too long to let somebody go. And, Greg and I are mission minded. We grew up as Christians. We have big hearts. Well, not everybody wants to improve themselves. And we have found that. So cut the tie sooner. So those are probably the 2 that come to mind first, top of mind.
I love that. The employee thing is always difficult, right? And I think I'm not coming back to the discounting piece, and I'll just make a plug here because I know that what I've seen that occurred at Bio One is often our franchisees who love what they do and they love helping people often don't want to charge the full price they should charge for their work. And in fact, I've met many franchisees who tell me they literally do work for free sometimes, pro bono for some people because they care so much about that person. And it's just recently, and I think that's an honorable thing. There's nothing wrong with being charitable in your work and bringing that into your work, but at the same time, you need to make a living. The business needs to be able to support you, your family, and your goals, financial goals. And so I know that Bio One has a billing specialist that helps, for example, with insurance billing. And Vanessa was telling me about how she's been effective at making sure franchisees are charging the correct rate at the insurance company. And it's helped raise prices in many cases where they should be raised, and to help our owners be more profitable. So I'll make a plug there. Definitely make sure the price. Every brand, that we have, and every franchisee, and we all struggle with raising prices when we need to. But the cost of living are going up for all of us, and if you don't raise your price, it's harder for your employee more. So that's right. Those are connected. Dinesh had a question here. She said, I love what you shared about peer mastermind groups. How do you leverage the franchise network to help you grow your business?
Well, Danessa, it comes out of Hi. Natural conversation. And I'm careful what I share in terms of, I don't want them to have anything that's going to think, oh, I don't know, because now we know and trust each other and we know what we're made of. And it might be saying, hey, I need another technician, or it might be, you know what, this competitor is kicking my butt with this police department. And, let's talk about, and sometimes it's a reminder of, and I even have, I have an approach that I'm utilizing now towards this big competitor I talked about who's taken business, bio business. And we just remind each other that these are your strengths. This is what you have to offer. Be proud and confident of who you are and make sure you're giving that message. So really, Danessa, to answer that question, it's about bringing up these challenges and getting feedback. And we women get real. We say things like, you're underestimating yourself, or you're undervaluing yourself, or, those kinds of things. So we have candid conversations. And a lot of the same, just back to that thing I said, Scott, a lot of the same issues arise in business, whether it's specific to Bio One or another business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks for the question, Vanessa. So tell me, where does your future take you in Bio One of Denver? How big can you get this business? What's your vision for what you can accomplish?
You bet. Well, Greg and I have added service lines from the core service lines that we had in the beginning. It took some time to do that because we needed to have the staffing so that I could then concentrate on learning what I needed to know about meth, about fentanyl, about other things. I'm a research junkie anyway, so figure it out. And we are looking to be at 1.5 to 1.75 million in 2 to 3 years.
Oh, I love hearing that.
And
I love that.
And it's a little challenging because there are so many other companies, junk companies opening up, doing hoarding, lots of other bio companies, and we're here to stay.
Yeah. Or you've got it. We have a niche. We're highly specialized, and you have a network that you've invested in. Mm-hmm. And when you let that network know that you do these other services, then it inevitably opens up these other opportunities and channels to get you in front of the right people. And it's clearly working. You're growing a great business. Let's talk a little bit about, I know last year you didn't have a chance to make the Home Service Summit in person, but Greg was there. I saw him there.
Yes, he was there.
And he was there. And you mentioned, maybe just, if you don't mind, talk about the value of being in person at these events. I know you're coming this year, so we can't wait to see you there. Thank you. Why are they important? What are the takeaways that come from these things? And why should someone, make that investment in that time? It's 4 days away from their business, which is a very valuable time. Well, why make an investment?
There's a number of reasons, Scott. And actually, after Greg came home and told me, every night, the update, I regretted not going. I wish I had gone. And that's why I said I'm going this year. That was his first at a Bio One conference or summit. I was always the one that went, and we have always gone to the conferences, so to speak, for our franchises. And I believe in them because two biggies: you make connections with other I would say I encourage you to make connections. There's the opportunity to make connections with other franchisees, and you learn from each other. And then you establish someone that you can pick up the phone and call. And in a sense, Scott, back to that little internal peer group, you can do that for each other. And then there's always information that you can obtain and pick up. I know Greg was pleased with the brand specific breakouts last year. Yeah. And then he also appreciated, some of the information from the speakers, but really the brand specific breakouts. And I hear that we're going to have more of those this year for Bio One, and we're both excited about that.
Absolutely.
You also get an opportunity to meet and talk with the corporate team. And I think that's important. I do find value in that. And, Danessa, because the corporate for Bio One is here in Denver, we've gotten to see her a little more, just some visits. And that really made a difference connecting with the corporate team made a difference. And whether you are pleased or not with, some things going on,
Sure.
you get to talk about it. You establish a connection, and then you can follow up. So, Scott, or whoever it is, I know we talked about this at the summit. I'd really like to pursue this further, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then vendors as well. So it's really about, it's more about not just become a people person. It's more about making connections with your other owners, your peers in that sense, your internal peers, and corporate and vendors.
It's really investing in your network again, right?
Yes.
You can make very narrow investments in, for example, business development, in terms of relationships and to help you build a network that can feed you business. There's
Right.
no question it's super important. You can also make networks or investments in your vendor relationships, because these people are going to help you know about the products and services you need to help do your job properly. And so they can be educational, they can be resourceful, and you want that to be on in terms of being, a leading in your industry. And then, as
Right.
you mentioned, the investment in, you're paying, every franchisee pays royalties and other fees. And it's our job as the franchisor to bring value back to the franchisees for the money they're spending.
Right.
And so if the average franchisee spends, for $5,000 a month, we want to make sure that we're giving back way more value than that. So there's all these people that work at our corporate office. We're there to help support franchisees, and relationships are critical to that. So coming and being present in person with the franchisor allows you to know what resources are available. I'll just share this with you as we're ending here. And by the way, if you have any other questions, everyone who are live here with us today, feel free to put in the chat as we close this out. But I was just with Juan Acuna in Dallas. And whenever I travel, I try and go for lunch with some franchisee from one of our brands, because I'm trying to learn about how their business is going, how can we be more successful for you and be more resourceful for you. And Juan said, well, I started going through all the new hires we'd made and the people now work at Bio One Corporate. They said, well, what does she do? Or what does he? I didn't know they were there. How do I leverage these people? I said, well, one of the best ways is come to HSS and meet the team.
Yeah.
Second is take advantage. If you're spending money in the form of royalties, squeeze out every last drop of value you can get from the organization. There's marketing people, there's operations people, there's software support people. They're all there working every day, trying to improve the brand. And so please leverage them as best you can. Cheryl, this has been fantastic. I'm going to ask for your parting words of advice. It could be anything like, you should read this book, or you should do this. If there's one thing you would tell a business owner at Bio One or any brand, any business owner of a franchise, what would be that piece of advice you'd give them?
Find a group where you can connect, even if it's a small group, connect with other people and get outside of your own head and your own daily operations, because that will lead to other open doors.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. And you've done that so well in your career. So thank you so much for being that example reminder to us, Cheryl, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to my peers.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing you in November.
See you soon.